Roselline was the Rose of the Adeboy family. The only daughter of Chief Adeboy, a real estate mogul with estates stretching from Abuja to Accra. Raised in luxury, Roselline was educated in Switzerland, fluent in French, and could play the piano like water flowing over glass. But none of that matched the brightness in her soul. She had kindness in her voice and curiosity in her bones. One day, she visited her mother's charity center in Mushin, where young boys learn trade skills. That was where she met Raphael. He was fixing a generator, his face sweaty, his shirt stained, but his hands moved like a magician's. Focused. Sharp. She asked him for help with her flat tire. He looked up. "You're not from around here, are you?" She smiled. "Maybe I'm just lost in the right place." From that day, Roselline kept finding her way to the charity center. Raphael taught her how to solder wires and repair engines. In return, she brought him food, laughter, and books. They fell deeply. When Chief Adeboy found out about the boy from Mushin, he nearly collapsed. "You want to bring a mechanic into my family? Don't you see what this is? A poor boy looking for a shortcut to the throne." Roselline stood firm. "Raphael loves me. He's never even asked for a thing." Her mother begged, "Rosie, please, he will ruin your reputation." But she didn't budge. The next day Chief Adeboy called her daughter to the study room holding an envelope in his hand. "I have purchased your ticket to Atlanta. You are leaving first thing tomorrow. Your flight time is 9 a.m. Your lovely Aunt Deborah will pick you at the airport. She and your cousins are happy you are coming to spend some time with them," he said, smiling. "I am not leaving Raphael. No one can separate us, Dad." The next minute, she stormed out of the study room. One morning, something shifted. Chief Adeboy sat quietly at the breakfast table, tapping his spoon against his cup. "Invite him," he said. Roselline froze. "You're serious?" Her father didn't answer. Just nodded. "Let's see what kind of man he is." That Sunday, Raphael came to the mansion in his best iron shirt and a Bible tucked under his arm. His palms were sweaty, but his eyes were calm. Roselline's parents were stiff but polite. They asked him about his past, his goals, his dreams. Then Chief Adeboy asked the final question. "Where are you from?" Raphael paused. "Ajali town. Born and raised." Chief Adeboy went still. The teacup dropped from his hand. His face darkened. "Ajalit," he whispered, his voice barely human. Raphael nodded, unaware of the storm coming. The chief rose slowly, his chest heaving. "Get out." Roselline gasped. "Daddy. Get out of my house," he roared. Raphael stood, shocked. "Sir, please." Chief Adeboy pointed at the door, eyes glassy. "Your people, your cursed town, they butchered my father, mother, and siblings. They set fire to our home. You think I let my child marry into that bloodline?" Roselline tried to speak, but her father shouted again, "I swore none of my children would marry from Ajalit, and I mean it." Raphael's eyes flickered with pain, but he didn't fight. He turned, looked once at Roselline, then walked out. The door closed like thunder. The silence in the Adeboy mansion after Raphael left could drown a city. Roselline didn't eat that night. She sat in her room, still wearing the yellow dress she'd picked so carefully for Raphael's visit. Her heart throbbed, not from embarrassment, but from sorrow. Not for herself, but for her father. She had never seen him that broken. The next morning, Chief Adeboy stood in her doorway, arms folded like stone. "You will not see that boy again." Roselline stood by her wardrobe, pulling her suitcase from the top shelf. "You don't own my heart, Daddy." "I own your peace," he replied coldly. "And that boy, that town, they will destroy you." She turned. Because of something that happened decades ago. Raphael wasn't even born. "You think that erases the blood they spilled?" He snapped, eyes red. "Ajalit is full of people who smile with knives behind their backs. Your grandparents, My father and my 2 siblings, they didn't survive their betrayal. I watched them die. I was a boy, Rosie. I remember the flames. The screams. She softened for a moment. I'm sorry that happened to you. Truly. But I will not punish Raphael for a war he never fought. Her mother entered, teary-eyed, holding a shawl. Please, Rosie. Don't do this. Don't throw everything away. Roselline stepped forward, calm but fierce. I love you both. But if love cannot change your hearts, then I must follow mine. Chief Adeboy's face turned pale. You will no longer be welcomed in this house. So be it. She zipped her suitcase. Walked past the housekeeper, the security guards, and the driver who had known her since she was 5. By the time the gate closed behind her, she didn't cry. She knocked on Raphael's door by noon. He opened, stunned. She smiled through exhaustion. I told you. I choose you. That evening, her parents sat in the vast, gold-plated dining room. But the food turned cold. The music was off. And the rose at the center of the table looked strangely alone. The Adeboy mansion had never known silence like this. Since Roselline left, the air inside the house hung heavy like mourning cloth. No laughter from the stairs. No piano music drifting from the study. No midnight cocoa making in the kitchen. Just echoes. Chief Adeboy sat in his armchair, eyes glued to a television that played without sound. He hadn't touched his phone in hours. Her mother, Lady Tenny Adeboy, wandered the hallways like a ghost. She called out for Roselline in her sleep. Once, she even set the table for 3, forgetting, then remembering, and breaking down in sobs that shook the marble floors. By the end of the week, she collapsed during prayer. The doctor said it was stress. Emotional trauma. Her blood pressure had climbed like a mountain, and she refused food. She's asking for your daughter, the doctor told Chief Adeboy. That's the medicine she needs now. Meanwhile, far from the chandeliers and fine china, Roselline sat cross-legged on a tin mat beside Raphael in their tiny, sun-dappled apartment. The room had just one fan, a shared wardrobe, and peeling green paint on the wall, but it was warm. Not in temperature, but in love. Raphael had surprised her with a small bouquet of wildflowers he picked himself. He sang old folk songs as he cooked okra soup on a single burner. He massaged her feet after long days and listened to her dreams with his full chest. I know this house isn't much, he once said, but it holds the most valuable thing I've ever had. She kissed his hand. It's more than a mansion to me. But late at night, when she thought he had fallen asleep, Roselline would sometimes stare at the ceiling, thinking of her mother's soft hands, her father's laughter when he wasn't wearing pride like armor. She missed them. But love needed to be fought for. She chose to stay. Back in the mansion, Chief Adeboy stood at his wife's bedside, watching her pale face. He held her frail hand and whispered, I may lose everything, but I cannot lose you too. He knew what he had to do. Chief Adeboy stood at the window of his study, watching the sun drown slowly behind the city skyline. His face was tired, his eyes heavier than usual, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of decisions that twisted his soul. When Roselline walked in, escorted quietly by a trusted driver, the house did not roar in welcome. It sighed. Her mother, too weak to come downstairs, had whispered blessings from her room. That alone was enough to bring Roselline back through those doors. She entered the study. Her father didn't turn. Only when she said, Daddy, did he finally face her. He looked at her for a long time. The stubbornness of her chin, the sadness in her eyes, the fire in her soul, so much like his late mother. I will speak, he said, voice thick. And you will listen. She nodded, heart thudding. I will not stop your marriage anymore. I fought and lost. If I continue, I may lose your mother, and I won't survive that. He paused, then continued slowly. So, I will give you a choice. A final one. She blinked. What choice? I will transfer more than half of my estate to you, your name alone. Lands. Stocks. Properties. all sealed. But he leaned forward. You will no longer be my daughter. From the day of your wedding, you will not call me father again. I will not attend. You may have access to your mother while she lives, but never to the remaining half of my legacy. When I die, the rest will go to the motherless. Roselline's lips trembled. Daddy. I am not your enemy, he said, almost softly. But I am a man with wounds too deep for time to erase. I lost my father to Ajalit. I cannot lose myself too. He stood, walked past her, and placed a sealed envelope on the table. In that envelope is the offer. Terms. Documents. No pressure. But if you accept, you must live with it. He looked at her, really looked at her, then added. Take your time. Come back with your answer. And with that, he walked away. Leaving her in the same room, but in a different world. Roselline stood still after her father left the study. The house that once felt like a palace now felt like a courtroom. Heavy with judgment. Drenched in memories. She held the sealed envelope tightly, but her feet led her upstairs, not to the past, but to the woman who had loved her the longest. She knocked lightly on her mother's door. Come in, a soft voice replied. Roselline opened the door slowly and stepped inside. Lady Tenny Adeboy was lying on the bed, her frame looking thinner, her skin paler than Roselline remembered. But her eyes lit up with a sudden spark of life the moment they met hers. Rosie, she breathed. Roselline rushed forward, falling to her knees by the bedside, tears already streaming down her face. Mommy. I missed you, she whispered. Her mother sat up slowly, weak, but stronger by the second. She cupped her daughter's face. My baby. I thought I wouldn't see you again before I closed my eyes. Roselline leaned into her hands, sobbing. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because no one was listening. No one believed in my love. Lady Tenny wiped her tears with trembling fingers. We believed in you, Rosie. That's why we were scared. We've seen people destroy families in the name of love. We wanted to protect you from pain, even if it meant becoming your pain. Roselline looked up, voice cracked. But he loves me. Not for what I have. For who I am. He's the one that holds me when I break. He gives me peace I can't explain. Her mother smiled faintly. Then maybe you found something we never understood. They talked for a long time about childhood memories, old laughter, secret recipes, and how love had changed shape in different seasons of life. Before Roselline stood to leave, she sat on the edge of the bed and held her mother close. Lady Tenny whispered, whatever decision you make, just know, my love is not tied to inheritance. You are mine, always. Roselline kissed her mother's forehead, gently wiped her eyes, and stood up. As she reached the door, she turned back once more. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Rosie. More than the gold your father counts. She left the mansion quietly. Back to the tiny home where her heart lived. Where Raphael waited, with no diamonds or estates, only love, and arms open like home. The rickety gate creaked as Roselline stepped back into the small compound. The sun had gone down, and the streetlights flickered to life, casting long golden shadows across the narrow walkway. Raphael was seated outside on a plastic chair, a bowl of unwashed plates beside him, his eyes distant, lost in the weight of something only the heart can carry. He stood quickly as he saw her approach, concern flashing across his face. You're back. Roselline nodded, tired. Yes. And I have a lot to tell you. They sat together in the dim light of their living room. The single bulb above them buzzed quietly, and the fan rattled softly in the corner. Raphael took her hand, gentle and expectant. She told him everything. Every word. Every breath. Her father's offer. The conditions. The pain. The shock. Her mother's tears. Her own heartbreak. When she finished, silence hung like a heavy coat. Then Raphael spoke. Slow. Soft. Steady. Rosie. I love you more than my own breath, he began. But I will never forgive myself if you lose your family because of me. She opened her mouth, but he raised his hand gently. Listen to me, my love. Fathers don't last forever. Mothers, even less. And properties, they don't hug you at night. They don't call you my daughter when you graduate. They don't cry at your wedding. Roselline's throat tightened. He continued, voice shaking now. I didn't come into your life to take anything from you. Not your peace, not your parents, not your name. I only wanted your love. And I have it. I have more than enough. Tears welled in his eyes. But if it ever feels like I'm the wall between you and your family, then I'll step aside. Because losing you would be worse than losing everything. She was crying now. Don't say that, she whispered. I won't live without you, Rosie. You're the light in this house. You're the rhythm in my heart. But don't make a decision you regret every time you pass a photo of your parents. She looked at him, this man with oil-stained hands and a heart that could shelter the world. She took a deep breath. And silently, she made her decision. That night, Roselline lay beside Raphael, but her mind was far away. In her heart, a quiet storm brewed. She would return to the mansion. She would take the offer. She would lose a father. For the love of a man who would never let her go. The morning sun slipped gently through the cracked window as Roselline tied her hair into a simple bun and straightened her plain blouse. Today was supposed to be the day she returned to the mansion, the day she would accept her father's cold but powerful offer. She had barely finished dressing when her phone buzzed urgently on the table. Unknown number. She frowned but picked up anyway. Hello. A familiar, excited voice crackled through the line. Rosie. Rosie. Guess who's in Lagos? Roselline gasped, her heart leaping. Catherine. Sandra. Laughter rang out on the other end. Yes, it's us. We just landed. We're at your father's house right now. The security said you weren't home. Where are you hiding, you secretive girl? Roselline's smile faltered. She turned slightly away from Raphael, who was folding the clothes quietly nearby. I don't live at the mansion anymore, she said carefully. A short silence crackled over the line. What? Catherine barked, half joking. The Roselline Adeboy we know. Living outside the Adeboy palace. Sandra chuckled in the background. Are you secretly married to a prince or something? Roselline forced a small laugh. Not quite. Send me the name of your hotel. I'll come meet you. Deal. Catherine said. You have some explaining to do, young lady. As the call ended, Roselline turned to Raphael, who was watching her quietly, his face unreadable. They are old friends, she said, smiling warmly. Catherine and Sandra. We went to school together in Switzerland. They are probably going to be shocked seeing this. Raphael just shrugged lightly. Let them come. Whoever loves you will understand why you chose to be here. Her heart swelled again with gratitude. She changed into a nicer dress, still simple but clean, and they set off together, squeezing into a battered taxi whose doors needed forceful slamming before they closed properly. The hotel wasn't far, a towering glass building that almost glittered under the morning sun. Very different from the tiny streets they came from. At the entrance, Catherine and Sandra were waiting, both still as stylish and vibrant as Roselline remembered. Catherine in a bright red jumpsuit and sunglasses, Sandra in a silky lilac dress with her hair braided down to her waist. When they saw Roselline step out of the taxi, with Raphael by her side, their faces froze for half a second. It was subtle, but not subtle enough. Their smiles faltered. Their eyes flickered, first to his simple shirt, then to his worn shoes, then back to Roselline's proud, shining face. They hugged her warmly, but their glances at Raphael carried something sharp. Something questioning. Something dangerous. Inside the glittering lobby of the hotel, the golden light from the chandeliers made the marble floors shine like water. Roselline, Raphael, Catherine, and Sandra sat around a small cafe table sipping iced tea. The conversation started light, talking about Switzerland, old professors, funny memories from late-night study sessions. Raphael mostly listened, smiling politely but staying quiet, sensing he was the outsider in the circle. After about 20 minutes, Catherine glanced at Sandra, and with a sly nod, they both rose. "We'll be right back," Catherine said with a sugary smile. "Just going to check out the boutique downstairs." "Yeah, there's a bag calling my name," Sandra joked, already turning toward the escalators. Roselline offered a small wave as they disappeared into the crowd. Raphael turned to her and smiled. "I think your friends are interesting." She chuckled under her breath. "You have no idea." But in her chest, unease was already building. Downstairs, Catherine and Sandra did not head to the boutique. Instead, they called Roselline to leave Raphael and come and meet them at the boutique to show her some beautiful bags. They moved to quieter lounges away from the lobby traffic, an exclusive corner reserved for VIP guests. Sandra crossed her arms. Catherine leaned against a pillar. Their smiles were gone now, replaced with faces that looked too serious for reunion chatter. "Rosie," Catherine began, "what's going on?" Roselline sighed, already weary. "I told you. I don't live with my parents anymore. I'm living with someone I love." Sandra frowned deeply. "That guy? The one you walked in with?" Roselline stiffened. "His name is Raphael." "And who is Raphael?" Catherine pressed. "A prince in disguise." "No," Roselline said quietly, "he's a mechanic. But he's more than that to me." There was a long, uncomfortable pause. Sandra shifted her bag onto her shoulder and hissed under her breath, "A mechanic, Rosie? After all your parents built for you? After all the men in Lagos would kill to have you?" Roselline's voice trembled slightly, but she held her ground. "I don't care about money. I care about love. And Raphael gives me that. Every day." Catherine exchanged a dark look with Sandra. "What about your future?" Catherine said sharply. "Your image. Your children. You're telling me you're willing to live in a face me I face you forever?" Roselline clenched her fist at her sides. "Yes. If that's what it takes to be happy." Sandra shook her head, furious now. "And the part about your father offering you half his estate just to walk away from him? You're actually thinking of giving up your family for a roadside lover?" "Enough," Roselline snapped. Her voice cracked across the lounge like a whip. But then Sandra, breathing hard, dropped the bomb. "What about Anthony Morris?" Roselline blinked. "What about him?" Sandra smirked bitterly. "He's back in town. Richer than before. Single. Handsome. Still in love with you." Roselline scoffed. "Sandra. I'm serious." Sandra cut her off. "He's opening a tech hub in Lekki. Multi-billion naira investments. You think love can fry plantain when the bills come knocking? Anthony would marry you tomorrow. Your parents would celebrate." Catherine added in a quieter voice, "You deserve more than a boy with grease on his hands." Sandra nodded eagerly. "Give me 2 days. I'll arrange it. You'll see him. Talk. Catch up." Roselline's face burned with anger. "You don't understand anything," she said through gritted teeth. "You think love is measured in bank accounts. I don't care if Anthony brings the whole of Lekki to my feet. I chose Raphael." Sandra rolled her eyes dramatically. "Let's see how long that lasts when reality hits you, Madam Mechanic's wife." Roselline didn't say another word. She turned sharply and stormed out of the lounge, her heart pounding, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She didn't even notice that Catherine and Sandra stayed behind, exchanging worried and slightly cunning looks. Roselline stormed out of the hotel, her heels clacking angrily against the marble floor, her hand gripping Raphael's tightly. He didn't ask questions. He didn't press. He simply followed her into the waiting taxi, sliding in beside her as the door slammed shut with a dull thud. The drive back to their modest home was mostly silent, save for the occasional screech of tires and the low hum of street vendors calling out their goods. The city was alive, noisy, chaotic, but inside Roselline's heart, there was only war. She stared out of the window, her mind spinning. Anthony Morris. The golden boy. Tall, charming, son of a billionaire, heir to a vast empire. Handsome. Articulate. In school, the girls swooned when he walked by in his designer suits. Lecturers gave him second chances without asking. He had a smile that could melt stone, and pride that could choke the sun. She remembered how he used to toss his car keys on the cafeteria table like a trophy. How he laughed too loudly at his own jokes. How he looked at people like coins in his pocket. He had flirted with her once. Twice. Maybe even 3 times. But deep down, she knew Anthony Morris was the type to love you today and replace you tomorrow. A man whose loyalty was tied to convenience. Roselline shivered at the thought. She didn't want polished shoes and polished lies. She wanted dusty feet that would walk with her into any storm. She wanted real. And sitting beside her, holding her hand as if it were made of spun glass, was the realest man she had ever known. Raphael. No titles. No fortune. Only a heart that beat fiercely and steadily for her. She turned slightly to look at him. He stared out the window too, lost in his own thoughts, but his thumb gently stroked the back of her hand, an unconscious, steady rhythm that said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." Roselline smiled faintly, her heart full to the brim. No money. No offers. No old friends whispering doubts could change what she felt now. That night, as they ate their simple meal under the dim light bulb, Roselline knew exactly what she had to do. Tomorrow morning, she would go to her father. She would accept his terms. Take the half of his wealth he offered. Lose him as a father. But she would keep the man who would never trade her soul for silver. She would choose love. No matter the cost.